Hi girls, I'm here today with Damon Hayhow, who has been in the industry for quite a long time, about the same length as time as me, and he's my coach, so I hope that says something about how much I value him and his opinion. And look, a little bit of background, he knows an awful lot about an awful lot.
All right, pretend to.
And look, he's been heavily involved in all kinds of lifting, whether it's powerlifting, bodybuilding, strength training, and he's got quite an opinion on him. And again, I really value that, and I'd like to hear and share some of his thoughts to do with perhaps the fitness industry, where it's gone today, in terms of you girls, the figure, and to some extent the bikini and sports model girls.
This should be interesting, shouldn't it?
It should be, it could be.
Ingrid's prepared me for this interview by telling me that there's going to be 4 questions. I have no idea what these questions are, so this really is...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll start just briefly. You have prepped before yourself to compete in a bodybuilding competition. Now, girls, I know that you're kind of going to sit there and go, yes, but he's a boy and he's got testosterone and he'd train differently and da-da-da-da-da. But I think the way that Damon prepped is worthwhile of a listen. So could you just briefly explain how you did eat and train for your first show?
For my very, very first show, I've competed 8 times, up to winning the Nationals and the IFBB. I've also competed in the Naturals.
So let's go with the last one.
The last one?
Yeah.
The last one was the Sonny Schmidt Classic. I won the heavyweight division. I started my prep about 8 weeks out from the show, 6 to 8 weeks out from the show. I was already walking around at about 6.5% body fat. I was eating just over 5,000 calories a day. I dropped 200 calories per week out of my diet while training 4 days per week, just as heavy as I possibly could. The week before the competition, I went and won the Southern States Powerlifting Championships. I lifted an unofficial world record in the deadlift at 335 kilos, did a 180 kilo bench press and a 275 kilo squat. This was the week before the bodybuilding contest. I was still on 4,200 calories as of the day that I walked on stage. I didn't do 1 minute of cardio, and everybody told me that everything that I was doing was completely wrong.
I think I'll stop you right there. We've got some things that I talk about with what Damon just said very heavily on Figure It Out. Are you hearing some of that? High calories. We're talking blending the powerlifting with bodybuilding, which has come up on FIO quite a bit lately. We're talking no cardio, very thematic, and perhaps even that thing that everything that you were doing was wrong. Well, how was it? How was it wrong?
Yeah, well, the very, very interesting thing was there was a guy who was going to destroy me on stage as of about 12 weeks out, when I hadn't even thought about competing. Well, sorry, thought about competing, but it was just like, we'll see how it goes. And he was 117 kilos leaner than me, walking around the gym, and I was 97 kilos. He did all the cardio, dropped his calories. He was training for hours and hours every single day of the week, including the cardio, and his calories went down very, very low. He really, really suffered. And he competed in the middleweights at 79 kilos. So he was leaner than me 12 weeks out at 117 kilos. He lost 38 kilos to stand on stage, of which maybe 3 kilos of it was fat. I was 97 kilos. I stood on stage at 93 and a half, at 4.5% body fat or something like that, and took out the heavyweights.
So again, let's bring it back to a bit of the girls' prep. On that, did you suffer?
Not even nearly.
Not even nearly. Quote unquote. Love it. There's been a massive explosion of figure and fitness girls that are really desperately wanting to hit the stage. In the last 2 years, it's grown
insane.
Exponentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I joke that every girl with a face wants to compete in bikini or figure now. It's...
Okay, so let's ask him, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think?
What do I think?
He's in the hot seat now.
Let me give you some background on my personal philosophy when it came to competing. I got into bodybuilding because I like the way it looks. I walk around at 7-ish% body fat year round now because that's why I do this. It is a lifestyle in that it's something that I want to be and have. Competing in bodybuilding was something that I did because I could. I was competitive because of the training and the dieting that I did for myself. The thing that I'm seeing happening now is that people decide 12 weeks out from a contest, suddenly I want to be a competitive athlete in a sport that it's not even really a sport. It is a lifestyle. It's an activity that you want to do for its own sakes. And the way I was able to diet in for my competitions and all the rest of it was based on the fact that I'd been doing the work leading up to it. The muscle had been built in the gym, and I was following my diet year round because that's such a huge part of it. So it was because I was eating 5,000 calories a day and lean, and I'd come down to 5,000 calories, I'd eat more than that. I'd built up my capacity to handle that amount of food, that I was able to then drop some calories down to still a lot of food and be lean and competitive. Now, what we're seeing these days is you're seeing people coming in with no background in the training, and there's no...
Keep this to girls if you can.
And I'm talking about girls especially. There's no real background to the training. They haven't been lifting weights, they haven't developed the musculature yet, or any of that, and particularly haven't developed the metabolism. They haven't been eating the food to build up some sort of capacity from which you can then draw down from and stand on stage. And so you get these people just going straight to some coach who doesn't really necessarily know anything about what they're doing, and it's straight into 2 hours a day of cardio, broccoli and chicken, 800 calories per day, 12 weeks to stand on stage. And it's not healthy, it's not sensible, it just doesn't make sense. It's not a sport where you can, there's not any sport really that you can expect to be competitive in 12 weeks of practicing that activity, you know.
So to a girl who or lady that is thinking currently about getting on stage, what's your words of advice? Just brief, what are your words of advice to her? She's been 6 to 12 months, 18 months tops of weight training. What would you say to her? If her metabolism is probably not super efficient, what would you say?
Don't compete.
Great. Okay. Man of my own heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, what I would say to everybody is that the people who are going to win in bodybuilding competitions, at figure, bikini, any of these sorts of things, they will already look like that person 12 to 20 weeks out from the show. You don't become that person in 12 to 20 weeks. So if you don't look like the girl who could probably win that contest in 12 to 20 weeks, you probably aren't going to be in 12 to 20 weeks.
Okay, great. I think there always will be. There is always controversy on the best plan of attack when it comes to cardio for comp prep. Now, I personally know how you feel about cardio, and I love it. But could you perhaps explain what's your take on cardio during contest prep for the average girl?
Let's backtrack, because one of my big bugbears, as you know, is even the word cardio. Okay, it's cardiovascular fitness. It is what cardiovascular surgeons prescribe to people with cardiovascular disease to not die tomorrow. It has nothing to do with an athlete becoming a superior athlete on the day of a competitive event. It never did. It never ever was supposed to be about that. In terms of the fat loss, weight loss, and all the rest of it, we're talking about sick, sedentary people with cardiovascular disease coming back closer towards the bare minimum level of normal physical health that a person should have, unless they really do something abusive to themselves to become that sick. For athletes to be using low intensity, any kind of cardiovascular health training is utterly irrelevant. You don't have cardiovascular disease. Why would you do it? So that's my first part of it. The second is you become the athlete that you train to be. All of the biochemistry that everybody wants to fill your head with is really quite irrelevant. What is cardiovascular training? It's training to be a mediocre endurance athlete. That is only going to completely contradict the kind of weight training that you need to do to be a physique athlete. The reason that I don't say you don't need to do cardio, I say you need not to do cardio. It's training to be a worse athlete than you want to be when you stand on stage. The reason that powerlifting links in with bodybuilding is because muscles and strength go hand in hand. That's what muscles do. They move stuff. So when I was competing, it always made the most sense to me that if I wanted to stand on stage with as much muscle as possible, that would mean I would be able to move as much weight as possible. That's what muscles do. It's as simple as that. If I'm getting weaker and weaker and weaker into my competition, for whatever reason, be it starving or training to be a bad endurance athlete, I'm going to be losing muscle mass.
So would it be fair to say from your perspective that you would only pull out the cardio as a form of arsenal quite close to stage day, maybe 4 to 6 weeks out at best?
Look, my personal take on it is when you get to that point leading into the competition where you are no longer trained to become a superior athlete, you're just beating yourself up. You've stripped the calories down to the point where there's nowhere further to go. You're already malnourished and starving. Now you're just beating yourself and beating yourself and beating yourself with exercise. Do it with weights. Great.
That's a really useful piece of advice, girls. And finally, just a quick question. Performance enhancing drugs.
Yep.
Kind of they're doing the rounds in social media at the moment in terms of bikini and fitness girls particularly.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in, I'm not really wanting to get into the pros and cons and but really, what's your thoughts on performance enhancing drugs and the bikini girl?
It's utterly ridiculous. I mean, seriously. It's a division which is watered down on being watered down on being watered down from an actual physique athlete. It makes sense at the bodybuilding level where you're supposed to stand on there with unnatural levels of muscle mass in unnaturally low levels of body fat. To do that, using unnatural means makes sense. I'm not commenting on whether it's right or wrong or anything else.
Yeah.
I'm just going, if your goal is to look unnaturally ridiculous, then using unnatural means to achieve it is an option that makes sense. But if you're supposed to just be a bikini figure, a bikini or figure girl, especially in the naturals, I don't even know how a performance enhancing drug is relevant to that. No, it doesn't even make sense.
Great. Yep, I'd have to say ditto to that.
Yeah.
All right, look, thanks a lot. I've taken enough of Damon's time today. Thanks a lot for lending your voice. I'm
Always
sure the
a pleasure.
girls will absolutely love your interview. Thanks heaps.